Greetings, YouTube. This is Fragments of Memory, aka your friendly neighborhood armchair philosopher. Due to what's been going on with law enforcement and even with the Oscars, I begin to ask myself, can we truly be a colorblind society? Can we truly be a colorblind society? Now, what does it mean to be colorblind? There's two types of colorblindness. Of course, there's the one where there are disorders with the eye, i.e., I can't see red or green, or maybe I can't tell the difference between a dark blue and black. That's one form of color blindness. Now, there's another form of color blindness which is more theoretical, which is more philosophical, and that deals with the color of one's skin. And of course, the color of one's skin is merely a matter of the amount of melanin or pigmentation in one's skin, the eyes, and hair. Now, can we really not see somebody's pigmentation? Well, unless you're completely blind or your brand of color blindness prevents you from seeing the amount of pigment in someone's skin, I would have to say, I don't think we can be a colorblind society. In fact, I think it's foolish when someone says, I don't see color. And what do they mean when they actually say this? What do they mean when they say, I don't see color? Well, obviously, that first definition is out. You're not colorblind when it comes to someone's pigment. So what is it you're trying to say? Are you saying I don't make any judgments of a person based on the color in their skin or the amount of melanin they possess, however you want to word that? Are they claiming to be free of any type of prejudices? Now, I'm one to say one cannot be free of prejudice. It is in us to be prejudiced. All that word prejudice, if you break it down, we have this thing of prejudging. We make a decision before we have the actual experience. In fact, the very definition of prejudging, or shall I say prejudice, is a preconceived opinion. So it's a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason. So this wasn't a reasonable assumption, nor was this an actual or based on actual experience. So there was no actual experience or reason put into it. And we all prejudge based on what we're told, based on what we see on television. In fact, the associations we make about somebody with white skin versus somebody with black skin is usually based on media. It's based on maybe we saw black people or white people in action and we made a judgment call that wasn't necessarily accurate because you formed an opinion without a sufficient amount of information. And how do prejudices form? The first thing, of course, is parents. Our parents are the first teacher, first mom and then dad. And whatever experience and or baggage that your mom and dad are coming with, they're going to instill that in you inadvertently. Then once you get out of your parents' house, once you're old enough to go to school, the surrounding society, the larger society, i.e. the neighborhood that you live in. And of course, there are many factors of why you live in a neighborhood that you live in. We also have to deal with the fact that once you get in the neighborhood, you got to go to school. And of course, in school, many of the ideas of your parents are reinforced, as of also the peer groups in which you interact with and the circles that you travel in. That too will influence your perception, as well as your place of worship. Who goes to the church you go to? And even the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he once said to us that Sunday was the most segregated day of the week. So, and I've seen this growing up, where I've had friends that were white. I go to their church and there's more white people there. I've also attended, obviously being a product of the black church, I went to church and there were more black people. And now, with all that coming together, you have something called groupthink, because now it's the social or the societal consciousness that is taking place, because the belief systems about color have been created in that neighborhood. And I've said this in a previous video, we are all coming from some place. And then I would pose the question, are we truly free of prejudice? Now, the great broadcaster Edward R. Murrow is credited as saying, we are all prisoners of our experiences. We can't eliminate our prejudices, merely recognize them. So that being the case, I'm coming from an experience, and the experiences of also what I've learned and what I've seen and what I've heard, and that becomes my belief. So I'm not really conscious of the soundness of my upbringing or the lack thereof until I reenact the other. And of course, you got to ask the question, who is the other? Those who weren't raised like you, those who speak a different language, those who dress differently, and then of course, those who have a different skin color. And of course, because we as human beings, we tend to believe what we heard first and discount what we hear second. And of course, how you're raised, parents, is the first lessons you're getting. So that's the blueprint, that's the template that your brain has been set on. And of course, I assume, as do many of you out there in the YouTube land and in cyberspace, I assume the way I have been raised, trained, etc., is the right and normal way, while the others, whatever your other is, are odd, strange, deviant, aberrant. So we also make all sorts of assumptions based on race or skin color, which I actually said in a video about race. We make certain assumptions. Now, and some of these assumptions are, for example, black people are late all the time. We're not punctual. Or if you see a black man, he's most likely in a gang, a drug dealer, or he's trying to be a basketball player or a rapper. And of course, I fit none of those. Now, going back to the question, can we truly be a colorblind society? I don't think so. Because one, when people say, I want us to be colorblind, I want us to look at people based on merit, is that possible? Nobody looks at anyone based solely on merit. If we were a true system of meritocracy where we did it by the sweat of our brow and pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps, if we did that, what are we saying? That none of the factors that went into raising me or bringing me up had an effect on me? No. And I'm sure that I will lead a different life from someone who is white simply based on the grounds of they were raised differently. Also, the history of the skin color that I belong to, I did not come with a lot of advantages. You may argue, yes, I was in a bad situation. I was impoverished. I had a bad life, but I pulled myself up. Why can't you? People ignore history, economics, the condition of a community, as well as the infrastructure of a community. If the community has one, i.e. has one and then is able to maintain and defend it, which black people are not in the position to do so. And that's something that this one YouTuber, Sergeant Willie P, talks about. He talks about how black people need to be in control of the infrastructures of the community, especially black men, because every other group has benefits, where in the black community it is basically everyone for themselves. And I want to point out that nothing happens in a vacuum. So again, I don't think we can be colorblind. Do I think we can be racially sensitive to one another? Do I think that we can be kind to one another? Do I think that we can be respectful of one another? Sure. But do I think that we're totally colorblind and nobody notices your color? Of course we do. When I see a white person, a Latino, when I see a Pakistani, an Indian, I have certain ideas about that individual. Now, I may have to check those ideas at the door and deal with the person as an individual, but I'm not just going to walk in and be like, oh yes, everybody loves everybody, because I know the truth of that. Well, that's my 2 cents. So peace and be easy like Sunday morning.